we've got a story here that, to be fair, I thought would be bigger news than it's turned out to be, because it's talking a bit about the Treaty Principles Bill and the submissions that have been made to it. I do have some footage here of Sir Geoffrey Palmer. This is an interesting one, though. Hekia Parata, who was under John Key, was in the national government, was a Conservative minister. And we're finding this time and time and time. Chris Finlayson, all these people who are national stalwarts coming out going, what the fuck are you doing? So here's Hekia Parata and some others. Former National Minister Hekia Parata said the Treaty Principles Bill is, quote, unreliable and unnecessary. That's pretty damning. Recommending the Justice Select Committee report the irrevotably flawed bill back to the House and waste no further resources nor our nation's tolerance. That is a pretty condemning statement from a former National Party minister. Parata and former Labour Prime Minister Sir Geoffrey Palmer, I'm going to show you some of that as well, were among those making submissions on Thursday as the Justice Select Committee resumed hearings on the bill. The committee is due to hear 80 hours in total of submissions on the controversial bill over the course of a month. Parata said the principle of equality was well known to New Zealanders. My issue is not that we need new principles. We need those that we already have to be practiced and to be practiced fairly and justly across New Zealand. Parata argued that there had been a persistent conflation of the collective rights held by iwi, hapu and tangata whenua, which are practiced and related only to their specific rohi region and the individual citizenship rights Māori have as New Zealanders, which they are free to exercise anywhere they choose to make their home in this country. It goes on. We won't read any more of it, though. I'm going to show you some Geoffrey Palmer footage firstly, but Magenta, any thoughts around this? Because the sense I'm getting is that pretty much all of the, and this is going to sound patronising, but all of the people with knowledge, all of the educated people in this world, all of the people who have been there, done that, all of the people who have worked in this sector, all of the people who are experts in this area are all going no at the submissions. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, like you pointed out, the fact that people from like ex-national ministers are coming out and saying, what the hell are you doing? People who have made questionable decisions in the past are like, this is not the time, pull back. It's, you've got to be doing a bad job when it's that bad, and then making people go, wow, I can't believe I agree with her. I didn't think I'd see the day when that would happen.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised too, because not only did she get it right, but just the actual details that she goes into, I think, are quite important key details to really kind of hone in on, is that it's about making sure that they're actually practiced and honoured, not just written down on pieces of paper and ticked off, so-called done.
It does also seem to be a fairly common occurrence that when National Party ministers leave politics, all of a sudden they find their hidden social justice warrior. they find a heart which they didn't seem to have when. Although in fairness, Chris Finlayson did some amazing things with treaty settlements under a John Key government. Give baby his bottle. John Key got the Māori Party on board and said, you guys help us do this. Give baby his bottle. But still, they're coming from that. It's like people don't say Trump is anything new. They say he's a symptom of the path. And actually where the right is right now is a symptom of the path that did come through John Key, even if it's, how they say, this is not your father's National Party anymore, even if it's not that. So, like we always talk about old mate, whose name just jumped out of my head, former police minister who was behind the gang patch law, Chester Burrows, gang patch law under National, coming out as a man who was dying, telling Luxon that the gang patch laws are just a good headline, but they never work. Yeah. Why didn't he say that when he was in government? I don't know. Why did he find a conscience after? Maybe it was to do with the stage of life he was in. I don't know. But this doesn't seem to be uncommon. You see it in America as well, with all those former Republicans now speaking out against Trump, but the ones who are in there won't do it. It's a sad indictment of how people play the tribal gain while they're in politics, and then they turn their brains on, or at least they turn their mouths on. They become honest when they leave politics, which is a shame. But I thought I'd show a little bit of Geoffrey Palmer, because I've already seen Frosty give us a comment, and we'll put Frosty's comment up first. It says, Sir Geoffrey Palmer has written a brilliant 2-part article series on Newsroom. He's bloody brilliant. Thank you for the super chat, sir. So why don't we just have a little bit, it's only 3.5 minutes, maybe we'll play it all. Geoffrey Palmer's select committee submission, his oral submission.
Greetings to members of the committee. It's lovely to be here in front of a big committee.
Sorry, just before we go on, Sir Geoffrey Palmer as well, a lawyer, a professor of law, someone who understands law, and I would probably put his experience and expertise up against David Seymour, for a month of Sundays. Because this is, we're not just listening to a lawyer speak now, but we're listening to a lawyer who is now a law professor speak. So, someone who knows the law.
I want to carry on the stress that Karen just put on paragraph 7 of the written submission. I'll just read it. Whether constitutional reform is required and how that should incorporate Te Tiriti is a long-standing, complex and contentious issue in this country. A constructive and good faith national conversation is appropriate in light of the history. This should be approached with utmost care and respect. Those issues warrant a thorough and considered processes involving public education, engagement, and consultation. Process is everything. I want to stress, looking forward, the importance of the committee considering the fact that process is everything, because I wish to argue in front of you that the process that led to this bill's introduction was fundamentally flawed compared with the processes that are used for legislation customarily in this House.
You just feel like you're behind the 8 ball if you're supporting the other side. You're just listening to him speak. You feel like, oh gosh, this is not a person that I particularly want to debate. Yoicks. All right, we'll keep going.
Cabinet Manual in paragraph 7.65 says that ministers must confirm that bills comply with certain legal principles or obligations when submitting bids for bills to be included in the legislative program. In particular, ministers must draw attention to any aspects of a bill that have implications for or may be affected by the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Now, think about that. The reason that is there is that the treaty is binding on New Zealand not once but twice. It's binding as a matter of international law. It's binding because it was made for New Zealand, and it's binding because we are the successors to the British powers that they used to have, which we now have. So if this were breached, there would be international difficulties with Indigenous rights in a liberal democracy like this. And one ought not to undergo that sort of risk. So orthodox policy processes before the introduction of a bill like this would require, in normal circumstances, in-depth analysis that would precede the taking of decisions. The policy options would be analysed. There would be interdepartmental consultation and discussions, and Maori would be consulted. Now, instead, what we've seen is a bill that has clogged up the House with more than 300,000 submissions, it is said, wasted a tremendous amount of time and money, and it has damaged the collective fabric of the nation. That is what happens, I urge members of Parliament to consider, if proper legislative processes are not adopted. You don't have a policy process that starts with a bill. A policy process ends with the introduction of a bill. And that is the basic flaw which this ill-considered bill has suffered from, and it ought to be cured in the future. We really need to learn from this. This is the final thing I want to say to you.
There you go. So there's Sir Geoffrey Palmer, and I like how he talks about the process. And one of the things that Jack Tame pointed out to us in one of his interviews with old mate Seymour was in contract law, if we think about the treaty as a contract, if you're an interested party, it's not right for you to make the rules of how the negotiation goes. And the Crown is an interested party in this. And what would normally happen is the two interested parties, let's say the Crown and Iwi, they would have a third party come in to negotiate between them, and that's already been done in the courts. The courts would be the third party, and that's already happened. And actually, it's basically like you negotiating, let's say, with your boss on your contract, and your boss just explaining that this is what's going to happen, and you've got no say in it. Like that's not how negotiation works.
It's not a negotiation.
No.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's it. I mean, honestly, like, I did like 200 level politics paper, and even I know well enough that this is not how it works. You can't fundamentally change something that is built into the rest of our laws.
Yeah.
Because Te Tiriti is the basis for everything. By changing Te Tiriti, you are going to affect almost every law that we have. And that's a big decision to make, especially from a party that did not get the majority vote.
Yep. And if we go back to this idea, there's going to be some pushback straight away going, they're not changing Te Tiriti, they're just changing the principles around it. What they're basically saying is they're changing the way you read it. Now, if I explain to you, Magenta, that the words hot and cold, we're going to change their meaning of. We're going to change how you read them. So now hot means cold and cold means hot. And I say to you, oh, that element is cold. You might think, oh, well, that's fine because I can touch it. But we've changed how you use those words, which means you actually get burned. So actually changing how you read the words does actually change the document itself, whether technically or not. That's actually what they're doing.